Alright, back to half the day and a conversation with nihilism, essentially, or Kantiism, whatever you want to call it. Not that Kant was a nihilist, but I mean his ethics were based on the social contract, essentially. It was a contract between humans based on human values, kind of a thing, narrowed to a scope of almost Christian values, which doesn't have anything to do with real right and wrong, or real transgressions against the real valuable part, in a sense. So it's almost like an argument from the human fetus or something. You could make rational arguments that a human fetus is not more than a whale fetus. You can make arguments that it's not more than a gorilla fetus. And that at birth you could make arguments that it's much less than one of those creatures. Very rational arguments that a newborn gorilla is substantially more alive in terms of its consciousness than a newborn human. And certainly even a newborn gazelle, which has to be much more functional, much quicker. And I've sort of made these arguments. I mean, there's all kinds of interesting biological implications. You can sort of understand that if an organism has to be ready to run quickly, then it doesn't really have time to do the operating system thing. It has to just install like DOS, just the basics. And then it can, install some learning process on top of that. But it has to have a whole pile of structure, a whole bit of a coordination has to be built in. Gazelles don't learn how to walk. They know how to walk, essentially. A substantial amount of the programming already exists, and all they do is give it personal articulation based on their size. But I mean, it's really built in. We're human beings. It's years, it's months before they acquire this capacity, because their brain really isn't in the game, because it's being formatted in a special way to give it the capacity to do this language thing, which is really the big thing for humans. All right, anyway, but I don't want to get into complex biological. It's a very interesting subject, is all I'm saying. And the point is that what we're placing value on, in Kantian values, is just human-centric. It's just some sort of, I'll pretend that the human fetus is more important, when there's no reason to believe it's more important. We'll just give it sacred rights. And that's what I would call Kantian ethics, is just sacred rights. Not rights based on a foundational intrinsic mechanism. And Kant admitted this. He admitted his ethics they don't have a root. The root is human bigotry. And that's not a good enough root. Alright, anyway. So, Hofladay complains of my clone example. And when I using this clone example, when I said, look, if I made 1,000,000 of you, not 1,000, but 1,000,000 of you being tortured in the universe or something, I'm talking about yous. Alright, so I'm not saying just cloned in physics, the physical body. I'm talking about a clone of your psychology. Like you just instantaneously morph into another you, and you're just sitting there saying, I know exactly what his weaknesses are, I know his strength, I know everything about him, he knows everything about me. And I have to acknowledge the realness of that, the implications of that. And that's what I wanted people to think about, was the fact that if the other people are exact copies of you, and you know the exact implication of anything you do is going to hurt him, and he's thinking the same thing, anything I do is going to hurt him because he knows what I know, if you sort of understand what I'm saying. And so it's a significant thing to imagine having to interact with something you know to be equal to yourself, because none of our instinctive scheming works at all now, because none of this personal thing is rationally understood as personal. It's collective. There's just no doubt. You can't miss it. You can't miss that any time you try to deflects something, he knows you just deflected it. He knows you just fucked him over. Because he's you, and he knows what you know. And he knows that, no, I'm not going to do that, because he knows me, and I know him. And I know we're both going to end up jumping in front of the car for each other, because we know it's the same as saving myself. So, and now the thing that makes it interesting is to start thinking about how many differences do I have to make in him before he becomes something I'll put in a concentration camp, torture, abuse, and then murder for food. How much different do I have to make him where all of a sudden I lose all connection? And that's the thought experiment, or the provocative thought I was attempting to get to, is that's what we're doing here in playing this stupid game, is we're identifying things as different based on irrelevancy, based on things that have nothing to do with the important fact, the fact that what I know is important is my sensations. There's nothing else about me that's at all value respectable. I mean, certainly you could say some of my intelligence might be valuable because it might be conducive to the creation of some benefit socially. But beyond my capacity to do something productive, which would be something beneficial to other feeling creatures, the only thing about me that's precious is the core, the feeling thing. And the feeling thing, that's the bit of the neurology that goes all the way back. I'm not better than a gorilla in that manner. I'm not better than the pig. I'm not better than the dog. I'm not better than the cat. I'm not better than the mouse in terms of my capacity to feel. And that's the fact that has huge implications. Now, yes, I can feel for a lot of different reasons a mouse can't feel for. They can't do the same kind of empathy thing. They can't do the same kind of symbolic seeing myself in somebody else. Recognizing that, well, he has a size 11 foot and I have a size 10.5 foot, that would be silly. His skin is brown, my skin is white. That would be silly. I mean, all the silly things to get over, the silly differences that don't matter. But yeah, so mice can't do that. They can't think better than they feel, so they just end up feeling crudely. And human beings like to turn that meaning crude means superficial, and it's not superficial. It might be crude, but it's not superficial, and it's not insignificant. And it might well be more significant than what we feel. As I've pointed out, we might have to do language. We might have lost some of our sensual capacity. We don't smell the world as richly as the other animals do, the other mammals. So, we're living in a duller world, not as intense a world as they're living in. So their suffering might be greater than our own. We don't have a capacity to say for sure, but I'm saying there's no reason, logically, to see any connection between being able to add numbers or being able to do a symbolic language and being able to feel. I don't think anyone's arguing that a humanoid from 50,000 years ago, before language, wasn't a feeling-rich organism. I don't think anybody's trying to make that rational argument. That his welfare, if he was on the torture gurney, his pain and suffering would be just as real as ours. I don't think anyone's trying to make that argument. And I don't think it's an argument based on any facts. So that was the purpose of the clone argument. And continues to be its function, is to allow you to understand that it is superficial differences that allows you to see torture and other things as irrelevant or meaningless or unsubstantial. And if you saw the other things as copies of yourself, as real players, then you'd realize I can't justify it. I can't just talk it away. I can't just sweep it under the rug. If I had an exact clone with exactly my sensations and I set him out into the world, I couldn't just sweep under the rug my awareness that something just like me, feeling what I feel, is experiencing the world in some other place right now, in some unknown circumstance. It would create a sense of that's important, it's worth worrying about. I'm just saying that fact of that empathy should, by reason alone, we should be capable of manifesting some understanding of it. If we can't feel it, we should be able to understand why we should be feeling it when we look at the rest of the world. And that's all I'm arguing. So our intellect can see the inconsistency, it can see the hypocrisy of our devotions, and understand that our intellect has really got to make these value equations. Our intellect is the only part that can do the math correctly, because our subjective self will see the dark skin or some other difference and pretend it's important when it's not. Alright, enough of that. Alright, so then content of social contract. So the point is that this thing that I'm metaphoring by using the word game, he doesn't like this idea, but the game is like the game Columbo, you know, the detective. The game, you can metaphor it to even a surgeon doing surgery. The game is a challenge to identify reality, identify how to maximize performance in it. That's the game I'm talking about. And you can't play a good game if you can't identify where the good bumpers are to hit, like it's a pinball or something. If you haven't properly identified what thing's worth 50,000 plus points and what thing's worth 50,000 negative points, if you haven't identified these things correctly, you're not going to be able to play the game. And that's the argument here. And I'm arguing that there is a reality. You're saying there isn't. Human beings project it. Human beings just make it up. They just decide that's worth 50,000 and that's worth negative 50,000. I don't have to apply reason or facts or evidence. I can just state it because I'm a human being and I have the authority to decide what reality is. I don't have to describe reality. I dictate reality. And that's where we fundamentally disagree. And I'm arguing that there's little point in arguing if we can't get that premise right. If there's no premise, there's no point. If there has to be a foundation laid, and if the foundation is so inconsistent, if our color recognition is so far off, I've made metaphor this to a lot of things. If our languages don't have enough common words, there's just no communication. And I'm saying there's no communication. I can't have a rational conversation with somebody who has negated the existence of the things I see as most rationally important in the game we're playing. You're extracting from the game the most important bumpers, the ones that are worth the most, and you're taking them out of the game. And I can't see any point in playing a game blinded by not seeing those bumpers. I can't argue it. I can't talk about it. I can't talk about navigating it. What would be the point of talking about navigating a path where I know where there's all kinds of bear traps and trapdoors and, you know, swinging axes, and you're saying they don't exist? Can we really have a conversation about how to walk the path when we don't agree on any of the obstacles? No point. All right. So again, it's the last thing on Kant. I would say it's just it's a compromise. It's a pragmatic way to establish value based on some popular culture or something. It's just it has no rational basis. It's a fallacious foundation for defining value to say let's have a democracy. That's the worst case. That's the least. That's like a guaranteed failure when you say let's include the stupid people's opinion too. You're doomed to failure. And so I'm saying I think I have a rational argument for my arrogance. I think I have a rational defense for my assertiveness. I think the evidence is clear and glaring, and you're pretending it's not, and that's your right. But I'm just saying I am conscious. I am experiencing it. I can clearly delineate between pain and pleasure, good and bad. And if you want to claim those two things don't exist, you can claim it, you can state it, and what I'm saying is we really can't talk about anything real in the world because you're missing the most important part of understanding the world, in my opinion. Okay. So and then he says something like, he implied You know, that if I don't agree with him, then somehow I'm demonstrating that he's right. If I won't play on his field. He's saying he won't play on mine. He's saying it right here. Game of his choosing. Well, you can call it his choosing. What I'm saying is I'm making a rational argument defending my choice. I'm basing it on science and evolution, and the basic function of the human brain. You're claiming that you have special knowledge that suffering really isn't so bad, and that it isn't so much different than pleasure. It's just brain configurations. That's your claim. I'm saying I don't see any evidence to believe that. I don't see any reason to doubt what my senses are creating. They're creating the sensations. You're denying their existence, and I'm saying, how can you deny their existence? How can you deny their qualitative value when that's the only thing they seem to have is qualitative value? They don't even have a way, you can't even describe what they are beyond describing their badness or their goodness. They're impossible to describe as any other thing, in any other way. They don't have any other character except the fact that they are bad. Pain only means something because it's unpleasant. It's only noticeable because of its unpleasantness. Shit. So anyways, yeah. So again, he's arguing as if I'm forcing him to do something. When I know I'm saying, go ahead and believe what you believe. I'll call you what I think you to be, an idiot or crazy, and we'll just leave it at that. There's no, you want to call me an idiot and I'm crazy, go ahead. I don't think you have evidence to do that, though. And I think I have plenty of argument to make, especially to the other sentient organisms who are honest about what they feel, that I can explain to them that they know they wouldn't want identical copies of their entire identity, their personality and body, subjected to torture. They would know that wouldn't be a good idea. They would know it without any doubt. They would suggest not pressing the button that would initiate that. And they would pay real money, I think, to stop somebody from pressing that button. So anyway. Okay. Let's see, the fact that most people are wrong. Yeah, so look, the fact that, that's not the problem with Kant. You got all these various opinions, you equalize them all, and just say that it's all this subjective mush. Well, it isn't. I think there are good and bad arguments. And I haven't heard any good argument explain to me how my negative sensations are not negative. Except somebody just saying it. And a Kanavad. Hey, I don't care. Torture me. I don't care. It's fine. It's no problem. Oh, fine, he says so. He says he has a brain that it doesn't matter. Well, I can't imagine how you bend my brain into the not matter category. It's always going to matter whether I'm eating cupcakes or I have a nail in my fucking eye. And that's just the truth. And I think this is a silly conversation to attempt to negate not only the existence of that fact, but the existence of the facts that premise it, which are everything about evolution is the fact that the whip is a whip. It's not a carrot. It is a negative. And that's why the thing works, is because it's a negative. Because it's not the same as a carrot. For fuck's sake. Alright, so in the bottom line is the game is just a way of describing the challenge of intelligence. The challenge of intelligence is to collect evidence and decipher reality out of it. The truth. It's to find the truth and actualize the truth, in my opinion. That's the job. Find the evidence and convert it into a conviction. That's the job. Prosecute the reality.
The criticism is that it's based upon the conception of an individual insisting that we play this game.
I don't know what that means. An individual is insisting that we play this game. Again, the point is we're born into it. I didn't volunteer for it. And I'm just saying the obvious function, in my opinion, of intelligence is to do actually what I'm saying. It's to acquire knowledge for the purpose of navigation. That's why we have a brain. The purpose of eyes and ears and sense organs is to collect data so I can process the environment, so I don't walk into trees, so I don't fall off of cliffs, so I don't bang into angry bears. That's the very purpose of the thing. It's primary. It's good at it. It's made for it. I don't know how to say it. I mean, obviously nature doesn't make things for this kind of reason ahead of time. But the obvious function is obvious. And the value of that function, in my opinion, is also obvious. The obvious value of collecting data and representing it accurately to put pieces of a puzzle together is intrinsically sensible. It's intrinsically sensible when the pieces are scattered to put them where they should be. And that's what brains do. It puts facts where they should be.
It's based upon what you say is ultimate value.
Yeah, what I argue, okay, again, I can't do anything besides argue it in this context. Certainly I say it, but I more than just say it, okay? I don't just declare the value. I go to sometimes extensive lengths to explain the origins and mechanisms, the evidence. I testify extensively to the volume of evidence that indicates this is the kernel of value. Shit.
And extract all these things. And if I won't see that, then there's no conversation to be had.
Yes, now, I don't know how you can't understand that. If we don't agree on what makes a boat move forward, and you're rowing one way and I'm rowing the other way, then you just end up going in a stupid circle. It's a waste of both of our efforts. So what I'm saying is we either resolve this value challenge or nothing else can really be talked about, because everything sort of has value importance. Every subject that means anything or is worth discussing is only worth discussing because there is something at stake. You don't talk about things that have no stakeholders at all. Even physics has some rational stake in the sense that you have some general idea, a general truth that getting it right is better than getting it wrong, and that somehow will help in the processing of our future. Having the right answer versus the wrong answer gives you more power.
Which is, like I said, to validate my criticism, to say you have no objective point that you can put to me.
Well, again, I'm saying that the evidence, the facts are objective. Nature's objective. Many of the facts we have gleaned from it are objective. And again, you can say that my testimony of being a consciousness is not objective. That to say it's something else would be to say it was a lie. Now, if you want to say I'm lying about my sensate experience, I'm going to say bullshit, okay? Prove it, or fuck you, or who needs this crap, okay? If we can't at least concede that we're attempting to be honest in what we observe in the universe, then fuck the conversation right there. So I'm just saying, what, do you think I'm being dishonest? It's an objective fact as far as I'm concerned that I feel. Now, you want to say that's not an objective fact? I think that's just bullshit. I'm telling you, I have sensations. Now, you can't feel my sensations, but I'm telling you, I can really tell the difference between feeling good and feeling like shit. It's a huge difference, and the difference is made out of value. It's a value difference.
That will compel me to play this game.
Well, again, we're not playing the game, we're describing the game. So, again, this isn't about playing the game. We can't even get the description of the game right, okay? The game is going to be played by the human race. We're all playing our individual parts. I'm not telling you what game to play. I'm telling you what game to understand exists. I'm saying why I believe this is the game we're playing. The game we're playing means that you are an asshole. You are just as bad as a Nazi maligning a Jew. When you sit there and malign other mammals because they can't add and they can't speak English. That's just bullshit. That's a grotesque bigotry.
Yeah, there's no objective point of reason.
Well, again, I'm saying it's an objective point of reason to point out that we evolved here on this planet, that the mammals are not 9 million miles away from us genetically. They're not substantially different organisms. The ability to feel is the old part of the brain, not the new part. The new part is adding and vocabulary. That's the part that's only a few thousand fucking years old. Okay? The old part is being a mammal, feeling. That's the part. And that's been going on for a long fucking time.
That can compel me to play this game. I say I want to play the game of reason.
No, and your reason is I will play human bigotry. I'll just pretend that there's something innately about adding numbers and having vocabulary words that makes me innately more sensitive and innately more important and my welfare innately more critical to the universe. And I'm saying that is not reason, that's bullshit. Convenient human bullshit. Just a gigantic pile of fucking crap.
And I extract a morality before I can even begin to think about purposes and so on from the mere fact of wanting to use reason. That statement entails...
Again, reason doesn't mean anything if your facts are incorrect. So I'm just saying reason is another word for logic, or rationality would be logical consistency. Those are the kind of rules of logic would apply to the rules of reasoning. And so it's the processing of evidence. So I'm saying, what evidence are you processing that compels you to believe that your first step is to embrace your bigotries? Because that's all I see in Kant.
A consequence of morality for me, which I won't go into because it's in lots of videos. The difference is you state...
I state that the experience is the only thing that matters, right? And so I state if somebody who has, let's say, no wife and no kids, and he's on a business trip, yes, he has a nice life and he's comfortable, but he's not going to cure cancer and he's not really critical. And there's a guy who's just waiting to take his position at work that's really going to excel at the job. And so that guy gets instantaneously killed in a plane crash tomorrow. What I'm saying is, there is no real tragedy, because all he really missed was a few more years of having a few drinks in bars and striking out, trying to get a date and this, that, and the other thing, and going through his mundane life, and then spending 4 years dying of cancer. And so in a sense he wins. And I'm saying we could see it as a tragedy because his life is ended, but the fact is it's not a tragedy. It's just not.
From your heart, from your gut, from your intuition, from your personal experiences, that you're using reason.
Well, again, you're saying from my personal experiences, and I'm saying no, the only experience I'm talking about is the fact that I do feel, okay? Again, I'm not talking about what I personally experience in every experience and detailing every experience and saying what I experience when I see the color red or what I experience when I smell chocolate cake. I'm not giving you those. I'm saying to you I do experience is the point, and that I experience decidedly in this manner that has things in categories of bad and good. Now, dispute that fact or we'll just stop communicating, because there's just no point. If you don't get it, you don't get it. This is where good and bad comes from, is experience, the capacity to feel these things. You don't think so? Fine. I think you're insane.
But you can't offer a reason to play this game except believing as you believe.
Well, again, believing as I believe means that if I analyze my existence as stated, I can't sense anything else going on. The only thing meaningful about my existence is the fact that you can hurt me. That's it. If you can't hurt me, if I cannot be harmed, I cannot see how anything would not be possible, and it's all equal. Who cares what my fate is? So the fact that I can experience unpleasant sensations is the only thing that makes me meaningful. Damn it. And my capacity, of course, to prevent other things from feeling misery and suffering and torment and anxiety and all of that shit. So the only thing that's valuable about me is either my ability to mitigate against suffering in the world or my ability to negate it inside of myself. But there's nothing else.
And as I pointed out in previous criticisms, structurally, as an argument, this is no different to a religious person.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that's just fundamentally, you're the one with the religious bigotry. You're the one that right off the bat says animals are out of the question. We don't even talk about them. We don't even consider them. They're not human. They're not one of us. They're not God possessed. So right there, you're already out of the boat, okay? Because Kant is the religious fuck. All right, so that accusation is nowhere based on the point of view you're coming from. And I'll still defend what I'm arguing as being completely anti-religion in the sense that there's absolutely nothing fable about it. What is the fable? The fable is, I think there's a huge difference between a value difference between having a nail in your eye and eating a cupcake. That's my theory that you're calling a religion, for fuck's sake. And I'm saying it is so obnoxious for you to open your damn fucking gob and say I'm a religious nut because I think there's a huge fucking difference between somebody eating a cupcake and having a nail in their fucking eye. Fuck you. That's not a religious statement. It's not a religious theory. It's a foundational, fundamentally, the evidence not only is in my experience, but god damn it, it's in your own fucking experience, you lying cunt.
Argument who says, you know, I've experienced God. Lots of people have experienced God, and that's how we know.
Again, this is just so dishonest. So dishonest. To sit there and say that because somebody would make the argument that there is such a thing as torture and that it is bad, okay, that's a religious theory. That's a religious dogma. You're disgusting. Okay, like I said, even Adolf Hitler wasn't that stupid. He knew his dogs could feel. He was a vegetarian. I mean, fuck, you're a dumb cunt.
There are lots of people who maybe haven't, but have faith. But you can't discount me as an experimenter. Yeah? I live an experience, and if I experience God, you see, so the fact alone of your experience and your testimony, irrelevant.
Well, again, I can't say this any clearer. I'm saying this is so fundamental a part of my personal experience as being a human being. Not one moment of my consciousness have I not been aware of the fact that I can be harmed and that being harmed is bad. Not one minute of my experience have I not been aware of that fucking fact. And you're negating it and saying it's a religious theory. Well, what I'm saying to you is we have no way to communicate then. Okay? Because whatever you want, you can go ahead and call that a dogma. Go ahead and call that a fairy tale. Go ahead and say that's a lie somebody told me, a fake story about a fake Jesus. I wasn't told that story by somebody. It came to me. So if I made the argument to you that North American Indians, all the North American Indians had a common experience of finding it very unpleasant when they hit their hand with an axe or a rock, that somehow that's a religious theory. The North American Indians are silly because there's no reason for them to have any kind of negative experience because they bashed their hand with a rock. It's a silly theory of theirs. It's a fucking religion. Fuck you.
Of the numbers, if every man jack on the planet experienced it and yet couldn't offer any.
Look, there's no other place consciousness can happen except to biological organisms as far as we know in the universe. It just doesn't just poof somewhere. It doesn't just land somewhere. So this is the only person that could ever testify to its existence as somebody who actually experiences it. And you're saying because they're personally experiencing it, the testimony is invalid. You're negating any possibility to ever prove the existence of it because you're negating anyone who actually experiences or tastes it from ever testifying. No one who tastes it, nobody who experiences it can ever testify to its existence. Don't you see how that's catch-22 bullshit, for fuck's sake?
Scientific, falsifiable method of what this meant. This would just be like some sort of common organ.
Well, again, there's just no point. There's no point in having a conversation where you're negating all testimony that a conscious organism would say, listen, I'm conscious, I experience it. So any testimony about headaches being negative experiences, or any testimony about, I don't know. You can go through all the sensual experiences human beings have, and all of that testimony is invalid. So any Jew who lived through in the concentration camp, experienced typhus, experienced starvation, went through the grueling process, any of that testimony about what it's like is irrelevant because it happened to a person. It happened inside a brain, and all brain testimony is declared invalid. I mean, it's just such a bullshit standard. Well, I mean, it's bullshit is what it is. Clearly, this is your rationalizations for your ignorance are just so preposterous. And this is the most preposterous.
As humanity experiences, the meaning of it would be something that's irrationally imprinted.
Irrationally imprinted. Again, the meaning of it. We're talking about the flavor of it, the fact of it. And again, you're just going to deny it. It's just something. It's a religion. It's a dogmatic statement somebody just made up, okay, that pain is bad. It's really big fun.
It has to be something that comes from reason or is subjective to scientific methodologies of falsibility.
Right. We should dig holes in people's brains to see if we can find the little pain elf. I mean, this is such a pile of shit. It's an experience. You can only judge experiences. You can only measure experiences. You can only analyze experiences in an experiencer, idiot. You can't pull experiences out and put them under a magnifying glass, retard. Can't be done that way. Stupid fuck.
And tests of reason. This coming from reason is almost mathematical. In fact, probably, I would argue, is mathematical. Anything.
Right. So I mean, yes. So this is how he annihilates meaning in the universe, is merely to state, okay, if you can't turn it into a number directly. I mean, you can directly pull your pain cessation out of your head and you plop it on a piece of paper and it turns into an actual digit in some mechanical way. There's no evidence. If you have to testify to experience, then experience doesn't exist.
That actually emanates from reason. It's
Right, okay, so no testimony regarding what it's like to be conscious can be given. No one could ever testify on what it's like to be conscious, and yet he's going to say it's reasonable to have a trial on what it is to be conscious, but you can't accept any testimony from things that are conscious. So none of their testimony of conscious beings is relevant, and you're going to do the trial of what it means to be conscious. Yeah, fuck that.
Of synthetic truths, you know. Anyhow.
Yeah, well, he's got a part 2, but I don't know if I'm going to bother with it today. That was just such an obnoxious pile of shit. You think there might be some sincerity somewhere in this crap, but there is none. He's not arguing, he's not defending his Kantian philosophy over some other philosophy. He's just negating the existence of all other philosophy because it isn't a compromise. It isn't a contrivance. He wants to live the contrivance. The contrivance is comfortable and suitable to his sensibilities, and he just doesn't want anything called the truth to get in the way. And he fucking goddamn knows, okay, that yes, by closing off all testimony from consciousness, that's the certain way of getting rid of the truth. I've stated it before, if we made an AI, and the AI couldn't feel, it couldn't be intelligent. Because it wouldn't know one of the most important facts of reality, what it is to feel.